One of the biggest things I've learned about being a podcast guest is how it is still important to prepare. Okay. And I think that this is key. So I'm 100 podcast deep, like you said. I feel pretty good about going on shows and feeling like you can throw really any question at me and I feel pretty good about answering that. But a lot of that's also muscle memory, you guys. Like that's also doing it so many times that like I feel comfortable in that. But I still prepare for every single podcast episode that I do. And I don't mean that I spend hours listening to the podcast and then like writing notes down or anything like that. But what I do is within 48 hours of when I'm going to have a podcast recording, I listen to an episode of the show. Now, it doesn't need to be the most recent. I just find what I'm genuinely interested in. Okay. So it is going to set you apart from most guests that show up on a lot of these shows. Okay. Because you're going to have the knowledge, A, there, and B, you're going to know the vibe.
And welcome back to the Badass Women in Business podcast. We've got Christina Lenkowski on the show today, podcast publicist, PR pro, and all-around visibility queen. Christina, tell everyone a little about your story and how you ended up building Publicity by Christina.
I am so happy to be here talking to my fellow badass women entrepreneurs. So I just want to start out with that I am really, really jazzed for this conversation today. It's going to be awesome because really what led me to where I am today is wanting to get more women visible and wanting to get more women's voices out on the airwaves. There's a lot in the podcast world and a lot of us know this, like the big names out there all tend to be men, right? And we want to make sure that there are more women's voices coming out there, that people get to learn from women, et cetera. So I have been in the PR marketing landscape for a little over 20 years at this point, which makes me feel really old, but that just is the way it is. I worked both in-house and at agencies. Went off on my own after I had my daughter, started another online-based business. And I did what probably a lot of people are listening right now did, which is I was like, I'm going to make a course. It's going to sell in my sleep. I'm going to make $1 million. Ipso facto, done. And so I created a course for PR for tourism regions. And that was my particular area of expertise in PR when I was working for agencies and stuff. And I kind of went about it the way that everyone at that time was saying how to do it. This was like 2018. Okay. So it was like very much ads, dump a whole lot of money in ads, drive people to a webinar, have emails, like you never have to talk to them and it's going to make sales. Okay. Now that does work for some people. Great for them. But for most of us, it does not. And so after that launch, I hadn't really made like any money. I'd maybe sold like a couple courses. And I remember my husband was like, what are we doing here? And I was like, shh, shut up. I will figure this out. Like, leave me alone. I'm going to get it. And what I realized was like, I was teaching a course on publicity and I had done no publicity for it. Right. So like a real facepalm like moment in my life. And so I tapped back into my intuition and I was like, okay, you've sent thousands of pitches in your life, like for clients and stuff like that. What would make sense for you to do? And this was 2018. And so podcasts were a thing, but they weren't the thing that they are now today, such a part of like people's everyday life, et cetera. But I thought about, okay, who is that ideal audience that I'm looking to get in front of? And I started to pitch myself to shows and I got on many podcasts. And it was like my business, it was night and day, right? I started to have people that were reaching out to me from all over the world, just buying my course. There wasn't this big, long nurture sequence. There wasn't whatever, like I was getting paid and I was getting asked to do consulting. So when COVID hit, the pandemic hit, all tourism money went away. I already saw the writing on the wall that was not going to be able to continue. And I just started to teach women how to get booked on podcasts. But by the end of that year, I had so many people that were like, yeah. Could you just do it for me? It took me a while, but I started doing the pitch work for clients and grew it to the agency that we have today.
I love it. You're not like the majority of people who we can say about them, those who can't do teach, because you teach and you can do at the same time.
Yeah,
so that's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, as you were talking about releasing your course on publicity and also going the traditional route, which is I also call the wannabe instant gratification route because people put something out there and hope it goes viral. I was about to unmute myself and ask, and how'd that go?
And I was like, let me answer for you. It did not go great. Yeah.
But you answered it just fine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you finally launched Publicity by Christina, what were some of the first things that you intentionally changed from your past experience that you've had in the agency model that you had come from?
Great question, because that is what held me back for a while from kind of moving forward with this work. So one thing was I was only going to do podcasts. I had no interest in doing other types of PR, which is what I had done for a really long time. But I was like, I don't want to be dealing with TV, radio, print, these other types of PR. I only want to be focusing on podcasts because they are a lot low stress than those environments. So what I mean by that is no podcast editor is calling me at 10 p.m. telling me that a client needs to be ready at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning to do XYZ. None of that is ever happening. And that is what I was looking for. I have a kid, I just want to even just have my own time, right? So I didn't want to be dealing with those high stakes kind of environments in that way. But secondarily, I put a guarantee on the amount of bookings that our clients get. So that is highly unusual in the PR world to be giving a guarantee on kind of results. But that was probably the number one thing that held me back from starting this agency is I had always hated the tension, because there's a real tension between what a client expects versus what the reality of public relations and publicity is. And so I wanted to really set that expectation from the get-go of we're going to work together for this long. And I can tell you that even if we have to work harder, this is what it's going to look like on the back end for you. And I think that being one of the first people to do that, because a lot of people thought I was nuts. People still think I'm nuts sometimes that we do that. I think, though, that set the standard of our clients' trust. We had a lot of people that signed with us that maybe wouldn't have if they didn't know that there was going to be that guarantee on that there. And many of our clients stay on for years, multiple contracts, et cetera, because that expectation is set and then usually exceeded.
I think so many people today kind of move away from guaranteed, and it is something that you never see in the marketing realm. So What a differentiator and way to set yourself apart. And you also have an avenue. I don't want to say that it's easy, but a lot of people are looking for podcast guests. So it makes your job a little bit easier.
Easier, yes.
Yeah, easier is the key word there. So I really think that's impressive. Tell me a little bit more about you. You're saying we. So what is the size of your team, organization? Yeah. And what has that growth looked like for you?
Yeah, I definitely say we, because there is a whole team of folks behind me that is also doing this work hand in hand with me. We have 4 publicists on our team. So folks that are pitching clients, researching, doing all that stuff for our clients. And then we also have an operations person as well. So this one particular person that works for me, Alexis, is the best because the amount of organization that you need to have to be able to handle all these different bookings for all these different clients and make sure that everyone gets everything they need and they have the reminders and they have, when updates happen, et cetera, is amazing. And so she's doing a lot of that work day in and day out to keep everyone organized there. But how I originally started was, at first it was just me, right? At first I was okay, it's just me and my laptop. We're gonna, get some bookings for my clients. And then I hired one other person to work as a publicist as well. Someone I had actually worked with previously that I knew was an amazing publicist. And I was like, okay, can I get you on board, at 20 hours a week or whatever to start helping with that? And so she came on, helped with that. And then we were handling all our own scheduling at that point. And I was like, no. No. And so that's when we brought on someone that could kind of help with that operations. And we had a VA essentially at first that helped us with a lot of that. And then just as we kind of grew client-wise, brought on more publicists so that they could handle the work, and then hired like a US-based assistant who then became our operations manager.
I love that. I love that because it shows that you really care about how you serve your clients in your company. So speaking of clients, I'm curious because we get a shit ton of requests for guests on a regular basis. And I want to tackle from a guest perspective or from your client's perspective, what is the biggest misconception for people, leaders, business owners that they have about getting booked on podcasts?
I would honestly say one of the biggest misconceptions is that the only thing you need to do is show up for the interview and then clients are going to come your way. This is something that I really fight a lot against with folks. And that's not to say that doesn't happen. To be clear, like, absolutely, we go on podcasts and get discovery calls, get leads, into our business in that way. But truly how I make most of my money on podcasts is my host relationships. So really taking that relationship with the host, and sometimes it's me then speaking in their mastermind or their membership, things like that, which is really where I will get clients off of. And I think that that's a huge, huge thing for people to understand is like, a lot of people just think like they show up, they do the interview, they hit end on the interview, and then like that is done. And obviously people are going to come to them. It's just like me with the course, right? It's just like me thinking, oh, I do that. And so then obviously people will just buy my course. And it's like, no, there's way more strategy. The actual interview itself, to me, is only one part of this strategy.
So I'll take it a little bit further because I want to, short of doing a little bit of self-promo for us, but I think that one of the things that we do on this podcast that's beneficial for the follow-through is that whenever a podcast drops, then we go on a week of promo for our guests, tagging them. We write a blog. We share the blog with our subscribers. We share a bunch of assets with the guest and the world, right? All of our followers and beyond that. But from your perspective, what are best practices for people to actually leverage all of that? Because if we take the time to produce all of those promotional materials, we would hope that all of those things that we create for our guests help them move their career forward, find clients, find jobs, whatever it is that they're seeking when they come on our show.
Well, I think that that's an interesting perspective that you have on that, because I want to kind of bring up two things. One is that's amazing that you do that. I just want to be clear with people that like most hosts aren't going to do all that for you. Okay. The least you can be doing is sharing those items that a host is coming up with if they create those things for you. That is, I know, a host's pet peeve, and that is absolutely a pet peeve of mine too, of when, you guys create all this amazing, even if it's, not saying even if as though this is nothing, but like, just a couple reels, or something like that you're tagged in. You need to be like, you guys as the guests need to be sharing that as well. Part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason these hosts are having you on is to reach new audiences, right? Like they want it to be shared on your channel so more people are hopefully listening to their show as well. So I think that that's a really important thing to put out there. You as the guest are doing a minimal amount of the work it takes to get this podcast out. Okay. I know that both Christy and Aggie can back me up on this, but it's a lot of work to have a podcast. Okay. And notice I don't have a podcast, right? And I think that's also important to notice for some, like having a podcast isn't for everybody because you know how much work it goes into it. And are you going to be able to be consistent with it? Right. So the very least you can do is be making sure that you're sharing those assets or an episode when it airs and tagging the host, making sure the host knows that you've done those things is huge. The other thing that I want to mention that I think is really cool that you said is like to help them in their career, right? I haven't really heard that from a host ever before. I mean, that may very well be part of their why they do it, but I haven't really heard that spoken out loud before. And so I think that that's a really, really cool thing to note is like how you as a guest can be utilizing this stuff and be making sure that you are putting it out there. One thing that I like to say is don't just put it out there the moment that it airs. Like you can be scheduling a post for 6 months down the road, for 9 months down the road, as long as that information is still valid and valuable, it can be going out to your audience multiple times. We have a client, Luis, who is really, really good at this. He has an episode air and then he plans, he sets for the next month's clips to go out from that episode, right? He's tagging the host in them, he's putting them out, but it's not just a one-time, oh, this just came out, so I'm going to post this thing once. And he's really particularly good about doing that on LinkedIn. And he has had so many opportunities come through his way and job offers even and other things because he's posting these things even down the road.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those insights because I think, like you said, it's a lot of the perception because a lot of times guests are leveraging people such as yourself, PR agencies to get them spots. And then we don't see much follow through. And you're like, wait, why did you take your time? It doesn't make sense. So understanding the strategy, I think is really key. And if you are a PR agency that is getting your clients on podcasts, I believe it's your job as the agency to let them know the expectations of them and to make sure that they are leveraging it for their own PR in an effective way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have been in the podcast world longer than a lot of other people. And I'm curious, why do you believe there's been such an uptick in podcasting, number one? And then I have a secondary question that kind of goes off topic to how do you as a podcast rise above the noise of so many podcasters? How do you differentiate yourself?
As a podcast host?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, I'm not an expert in that. I don't even have my own podcast, like I mentioned. But I do think that how you can kind of differentiate in that way is authenticity, truly. And I actually think that's one of the things I was going to answer to your first question is why have podcasts exploded in, the past 5 years or so? And I truly think that is because we really connect with someone when we hear their voice. We really connect with someone when we hear their real stories, right? In that way, and the vulnerability that can come with that and kind of telling your real stories there. So again, not being an expert in hosting, I'm not really quite sure. But what I would say, what we notice is when there's a really authentic host who's talking really authentically to their audiences, those are the audiences that are so dedicated, to that host and to showing up week after week in that, in that regard.
So along that line, you've been a guest on nearly, I think you mentioned 100 podcasts on your submission. So we've talked a little bit about expectations, but I'm curious about what you've learned. What's your biggest lesson on being on this side of the mic?
I think that one of the biggest things I've learned about being a podcast guest is how it is still important to prepare. Okay. And I think that this is key. So I'm 100 podcasts deep, like you said. I feel pretty good about going on shows and feeling like you can throw really any question at me and I feel pretty good about, answering that. But a lot of that's also muscle memory, you guys. That's also doing it so many times that I feel comfortable in that. But I still prepare for every single podcast episode that I do. And I don't mean that I spend hours listening to the podcast and then writing notes down or anything like that. But what I do is within 48 hours of when I'm going to have a podcast recording, I listen to an episode of the show. Now, it doesn't need to be the most recent. I just find what I'm genuinely interested in. Okay. So I've gone back sometimes months, right? I'll be I've gone back 4 months but I'm into it. I'm really into the episode. I like listening to it, et cetera. And it is going to set you apart from most guests that show up on a lot of these shows. Okay. Because you're going to have the knowledge, A, there, and B, you're going to know the vibe a bit. When I am listening to these shows, I'm not a lot of times I'm taking my morning walk or I'm taking my kid to school or I'm doing whatever. I'm not sitting there actively taking down notes or whatever, but I'm paying attention to are they asking any same questions, right, to their guests that I can be prepared for? How do they kind of end the episodes, et cetera? And also, again, just what is the general vibe? What does this feel like? Before we hopped on, Aggie and Christy are okay, do you have any questions for us? And I was is it cool if I swear? You know what I mean? And that's like, because the episode I listened to with them, like no one sweared. So like, I want to make sure that like, that's cool if that accidentally happens. Right. But like, I have that knowledge because I've already done some due diligence. And so I just can't even enough stress the power of like, don't just show up, like have some of that knowledge in there of like what this particular show is about.
I hope a lot of our guests listen to this prior to coming on as well, because there is such great value in that. And the key thing you hit on there is the vibe, right?
Yes.
And when you started saying that you prepare for every podcast, I was like, oh crap. Like that seems like a lot to do, but it's just doing your due diligence and research.
One episode. Yeah,
exactly. We have a lot of PR agencies that reach out and say, hey, our guest wants to know what exact questions you're going to be asking them. And we're like, sorry, we're unscripted because we want it to be authentic and a true conversation. And they're like, yeah, but, and I'm like, no, like we have nothing to give you. Yeah. So it's really interesting that people can do their research in a really subtle way that creates a huge impact.
I mean, we have clients that have asked, like, they're like, so will I get a list of questions before, you know, the episode or whatever? And I'm always like, no. You know what I mean? Like, even occasionally hosts will send us stuff and I'll be like, hey, they did put some stuff up here if you want to kind of prep. But I always say to them, I'm like, you don't know. They might ask you one of these questions. Like, it's good to be prepped and like know what you kind of generally are going to be talking about. But like, this is why podcasting is so effective. It's authentic. It's a real conversation, right? That you're having there. When I go to meet, you know, I met my friend for coffee this morning. I don't have a list of questions, you know, that I'm going to ask her. Like, we're just going to see how the conversation naturally goes, right? In that way. And that's what a podcast is. Now, do I like to know the general topic that we're going to be talking about? Yes. Like, I do think that is really nice. Like, you know, we tend to send some topics to the host when we're pitching, right? And then I'd be like, hey, are there one or two of these that you particularly wanted to focus on, so that our clients have a general idea of like what we kind of want to be talking about, you know? But other than that, like, no, you're just going to kind of let this conversation happen. And again, your first couple interviews you do, you're going to sweat and stumble your way through. Like, that is just the fact of the matter. This is all practice. It's all muscle memory. But once you're 5 in, once you're 10 in, like, you're going to be feeling really good and you're going to be ready for, as long as you've done that prep, you're going to feel really ready for like any questions that kind of come at you.
I'll add before Christy asks her question, because I feel like you have one since you had unmuted yourself specifically for that.
I got time for all the questions, ladies. Don't worry.
No worries. Yeah. But I'll make an evergreen disclaimer that the reason that most shows should be unscripted is because when you send questions and the guest has to over prep for those questions, it is very stressful because you feel like you have to keep to the script and it's not fluid. It is very clunky. And we started even on our side as being scripted, but we very quickly decided, I'm like, it is just not flowing the way that it's supposed to flow. Because if you ask a question and that answer takes you on a completely different path, then if you go with your planned question, it doesn't make any sense. So evergreen disclaimer, we will never script it. And our first question or request is always going to be, tell everybody about your story, period, the end.
Yep. And I was prepped for that because I'd listened. I knew, okay, they're going to ask me this first. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to tell my story. And then I knew the topics generally that you guys wanted to talk about. And then it's like, cool, let's go. And so I love that you said that and kind of made that disclaimer there of like, this is a real unscripted show. Like, we are actually just having a conversation. And one thing to point out is that's why podcasts are so great for introverts. Okay. So like, a lot of times people are very much like, oh, I could never do that. Christy's like, yes, me, I'm here as an introvert. I don't know, Aggie, are you an extrovert like me? I am like, I want to talk to them. Oh, I'm like, where are all the people at? Like that, like that's where the mindset that I'm always in.
I'm an ambivert. It depends on the day. It depends on if Mercury's in retrograde or not.
So I will say I get that. And also I need rest time after extroverting hard. You know what I mean? Like when I'm at an event, like I'm usually in my room by myself at night because I have been going hard and I'm like, I love it. Like I'm so excited all day. I'm so into it. And then like 7 o'clock, people are like, you want to go to dinner? I'm like, no. So like, I totally get it. But I love you all. But what I was going to say is one thing, like introverts a lot, there may be people listening to this right now that self-identify as introverts that are like, I will never do this. Like, I understand the strategy, like I get it, but I don't want to be talking to a bunch of people. I don't want to be doing whatever. And I am here to tell you, like, that is why introverts love podcast guesting, because you are literally just having a one-on-one, or in this case, a two-on-one conversation, right? We're not in front of a group of people. There's not, like, even before we started recording, Christy and Aggie were like, hey, if you mess up, you kind of go off on a tangent, like, we can always stop it, re-record, etc. So I hope you know that, like, this particular marketing or method, like, is for everybody. And I actually think introverts thrive in this environment because they like to have authentic, real conversations and go deep with one person.
I'm so grateful you went there. As the introvert, I will call myself out. I would not be, there's a reason why it's 2-on-1. I don't think I would be running a podcast if I didn't have a co-host and wasn't invited to actually do it. So there's something in that power there as well. I want to get back to your business. You spent time in the PR marketing agency world and you decided to go out on your own. I know it was a little bit based on lifestyle and things of those sorts, but like, what gave you the confidence to say, I can go and do this and I can make something of it?
Oh, I love this question. I really think, and I don't mean to get like sentimental about this, but I was very much raised in a family where I was taught I could do anything. And so I do think that plays into how my mindset is a lot of times in entrepreneurship, is I'm like, well, I'll just figure it out, or like, well, I'm just going to try it. Like, that's how I feel about like a lot of stuff, is I'm just like, well, let's just give it a go, and we'll just kind of see. Like, when I started doing the pitching, like we were talking about, I didn't think I was going to start a whole agency. At that point, I was just like, well, people are asking me and they're saying they're going to pay me for this. Like, I might as well just kind of give it a go. You know what I mean? And kind of grow from there and see how it goes. But I do think that what really gave me that confidence, I would say, was coming from that type of an environment where, I was kind of told, like, you can do anything that you want to do. But beyond that, I mean, and I always say this when people talk about my first couple years of business, if I didn't have a partner that was financially supporting me, I don't know how I would have done that, to be quite frank. I was just in a situation where I had the freedom to be able to do that. And if I failed, I failed. And luckily, after a couple of years, I was able to start paying myself and do all those things. But, I always like to say I had a privilege in my situation where it wasn't like my family wasn't going to eat if this didn't work out. And I do think that's something important to point out.
I love that take, because no matter what kind of articles you read out there about starting a business, some will tell you need to go all in. Some will tell you the best time to start a business is when you're still employed. Yeah. But it does make a difference when you have a spouse that is able to support you and is the financial, I'm not going to say breadwinner, but is stable enough in order to allow you to go out there. So that's really important.
To go and try. Yeah,
exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious, what has changed the most since you started in 2019?
Oh man, I think a lot of things have changed just in the pods. I almost said the podscape, the podcast landscape. I'm just going to combine them into one, whatever word I want. Now,
I actually like it. I like it. The podscape. Yeah, I feel like you should trademark that. I mean,
it actually sounds like a legit like word. They'll be like, oh, in the podscape, and then just keep going. Like, everyone should know what I'm talking about there. I think though that like a couple things have happened in the trends along podcasts. So one is that more so in like 2020, 2021, I feel like people were listening to a lot of shows. Like, they were very much like, we're all at home. I didn't want to hear my family's voices. I wanted to go upstairs, hear other people's voices, talking to me. Like, I didn't want any, I was like, leave me alone, please. And that time my daughter was like a toddler. Oh my gosh, you guys, how did we get through that? But I guess part of it was I would just go listen to podcasts, right? And I would listen to like all these different ones, like throughout the week. And like, I love true crime. So I'd like listen to some true crime, and then I'd be listening to some business ones. I'd listen to some like mom ones, et cetera, kind of getting through my week or getting through my time. And I feel like a lot of people were that way. Like, in actually 2020 to kind of 2022, the average amount of podcasts people were listening to were 8, almost 9 a week. So they were really listening to a lot of different shows. Whereas nowadays it's more like 3 to 4. And I think this is an important thing to note, is that people are still listening to podcasts. Absolutely, they are. But they are more so like, I have my 4 hosts and shows that I listen to every single week, right? Or depending on the show, every day, depending on like what show it is, what level it is, et cetera. And they are super loyal to those hosts. They are like a part of that world. They are buying the merch, they are doing all the things, like they are really, really into it. And I think this is important just to note of like how we're shifting kind of as a society to where we're like, okay, I just want more of like that authentic connection with some people, as opposed to just like a more baseline thing with a lot more people in that way. If that makes sense, that's kind of something that I've kind of noticed, like listenership wise. That doesn't mean they don't listen to new, if a new show pops up, people aren't listening to it. That's not it at all. I just think they kind of find one and then they really, really are, like I'm trying to think of the word here. They're invested in that show when they find one that they like.
I would agree with that. As you were going through that, I was kind of taking my own self through my podcast journey of my listening. And it's like now it's also our algorithms and feeds that end up pushing
Absolutely.
the things that you like right back in front of your face, which if you don't want to do the digging, you're just going to go with the easy button.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You're like, well, Apple says I would like this. So
yeah, I'm just going to say, yes, let's try it out.
Yeah.
Where do you see the podcast world going from your experience?
I think that there will always be a component that is audio only. I think a lot of our, I'm just talking about myself as like an elder millennial, we really, really love that audio format, right? Like I want to be able to listen to podcasts on my morning walk, in my car. You need to just look as recent as the latest presidential election to realize the importance of podcasts in our lives, right? Love it or hate it, decisions were made based on people showing up on podcasts, right? And kind of seeming more real, seeming more like a human, et cetera, in that way. And so I think that's such an important note for us to know as like a society and as a generation is like my generation, we're not watching the nightly news. Right? We're not watching these things. We watch things in snippets. We listen to podcasts. We watch YouTube videos. We watch reels, et cetera. People can hate all that all they want, but like that is the fact. Like that is the fact of the matter. And so I think that we're only continue to kind of see more news and more information be coming out in kind of these facets. With that being said, I do think that video podcasts and YouTube will continue to grow. I think that that's something that we're seeing more and more and more. And also with YouTube being a huge SEO platform as well, I just see that being something where more and more podcasts are going to be showing up as well. But I don't think that the audio only I don't think that the audio portion will go away.
We've been slowly gearing up for the YouTube world.
Yes.
We started posting, but we need the video production as well, which, more audience, more money than we can reinvest. So hint, wink,
exactly.
Wink.
Exactly. But I do think it's smart for podcast hosts to like be thinking in the way you are, because in a certain extent, it's like, if you're already doing the work, might as well have it be going up on another platform and potentially reaching some more people.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But it's a whole different beast to edit video than it is to edit audio.
Yeah.
So it's just like so much more. And now we have to put a disclaimer out to guests to be like, hey, this is fully audio and video. So if you want to show up as your best self, be who you are always. But I know we've had some people that showed up in several of our recordings and they looked at us and they asked us, okay, so this is just audio. Yes. And we do clips. And so we're like, well, no, there is a video component.
I know
there
you're
will
like
be
mildly offended. You're like,
what do you think we record for? and so, yes, there is always a video component because we do reels and clips and snippets, but we just don't release the full raw video because, we just don't have the bandwidth to edit it yet. So I want to go back to your business model and ask you, how do you balance the done-for-you services with the education as far as scalability of your business goes?
Yes, because that is one thing about being an agency owner, like a service provider agency owner, is like, it's difficult to scale, right? Like we can't have unlimited clients, because we only have so many publicists and so many, so much time to kind of be doing this work on behalf of our clients. So that is something that like, once I kind of get to where I may have a couple people that are like, hey, I want to become clients, but we can't really service them. That's when I go and start looking for another publicist, right? Not to where they would have a full roster of clients, but where I'd be like, okay, we know that we'd have a couple folks that we could kind of be putting in here for that. But with that in mind, I mean, we're only working with 20, 25 clients a year. You know what I mean? On that side of the business, because we just don't, I'm not looking to have a huge agency that has, 50 publicists working on, a whole bunch of clients, et cetera. So it also kind of comes down to like what you want. And for me, I kind of always wanted like a smaller agency, but like smaller, but the best. Does that make sense? Like smaller, but like we're going to get the job done like the best we possibly can. On the flip side of that, like you mentioned, I have, and we're actually launching it for the first time in years. I am launching like a course, or not a course, but like live trainings with our team support. And so that has been like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's been multiple years since I've done this. But we were having a lot of people that were just coming to us and they're like, I want to learn from you. I want to work with you, but like, I can't, I just can't afford, or I can't do like the agency thing. And I was like, you know what? I love to teach. I teach in private group trainings a lot, in masterminds and memberships. And I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it. But that is nice because now we at least will have some place to direct people when they come to us in that way. And that's kind of what we can offer them. That's at a price point that makes more sense. But I mean, when I tell you I had one service for years, like it was like our annual pitch broker. That was what we like. All our clients were in this one service. That's all I sold. That's all I talked about, et cetera. And that was kind of where I learned how to scale that and get the systems down and get everything kind of moving as seamlessly as possible. It's still a business. We're still going to have things come up, but as much as possible, so that I could add on this education piece and feel comfortable in scaling it, knowing that our services and our private clients are going to be taken care of just fine.
Really smart words of wisdom there in business. Do the one thing you do extremely well, build up your clientele. And then when the market demands something new, that's when you create the product.
Yes.
And I think you're brilliant in following that versus putting something out there and going, I hope they come.
Yeah.
Now people are saying, I want it, but I don't want this specifically. How can you pivot? And Aggie and I just actually did a webinar on how the economy is shifting right now and what can you do as a business owner to stay in front of it and ensure that your customers' needs are still being met. And one of them is, what do they need from a service offering perspective that you may not be able to offer right now? And if you need to drop that price point and create something slightly different, now's the time to do it. So
now's the time.
Kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
What does the next 5 years look like for you and your agency?
Sometimes it's hard for me to think that far out, you know what I mean? But I think that there's multiple things that I kind of want to be adding in. I do want to be able to bring on some more clients throughout the year and have some more publicists so that we can be servicing more clients. One thing that I'm really excited about doing, and I don't know if it'll be this year, it might be next year, but like I really want to do a visibility planning retreat. So like be able to bring people to a place. Like for me, I always want to go to Palm Springs. So I'd be like, we all go to Palm Springs and just do an event there that's like, hey, let's plan out your next year of visibility. Right. And that could be podcasts, but that may be other things as well. Right. There's a lot of other ways to be visible too, besides just podcasts. I'm a big believer in having a visibility KPI in your business. And so kind of helping people plan that out, be able to track that, et cetera, in that way. So I'm really looking forward to kind of having more of those like high touch client experiences like that we can all enjoy. And then I would say like, just things like I want to be able to take my team on a retreat. I want to be able to like go do fun things and also just continue to have the freedom in my life. Sometimes as business owners, I'm like working on a Sunday or whatever, and I'm all annoyed, but then I remember that like, this is what I chose. And that also is because I didn't work on Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like I kind of like just continue to appreciate my freedom, but also set boundaries for myself. I'm an Enneagram 7. I just want to be having fun. I don't want to be missing out on anything. Like I want to be living, a lot of PR people are 7s and 8s. It's like our realm that we live in because we're like, yeah. And so I want to make sure I'm doing that, but also setting boundaries because otherwise like I would just be like, oh, I don't work all summer. But it's like, no, that you do need to be in and doing some time here. So figuring out just like getting better at setting those boundaries and figuring out what works, for us as a team.
Well, that explains the enthusiasm. I'm a 3-7, so I overachieve enthusiastically. And so 7-8 is challenge enthusiastically. So
I'm a 7 awesome. Wing 8. So I get it. I'm like very enthusiastic, but also like morally, you bet like we ain't scuffling. You know what I mean? Like I'm very strong in my values and my beliefs and stuff like that. And then, but I'm always wanted to have a good time and live life, enjoy life. But I'm married to a 3. So I know the 3. A lot of my, actually a lot of our publicists are 3s. That's also like, they're very high achievers and they kind of, want those wins for sure.
I was just going to say you're exemplifying that Cyndi Lauper song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
She wrote it about Enneagram 7 for sure. She definitely wrote it about 7. Yes.
There you go. She wrote it in that mindset anyways.
Yes.
You mentioned visibility KPI. How the hell do you measure that?
Yeah. So this is one thing I'm very passionate about is I think a lot of business owners spend too much time doing things that get them in front of their same audience over and over again and not in front of new audiences on a regular basis. And so my personal visibility KPI is 1 time a week on average. So meaning there are going to be weeks that are obviously more visible than other weeks. I am doing something where I am getting in front of a new audience. So that may be that I'm guesting on a podcast. That may be that I'm attending an event. And that could be a local event, right? Like a local network. It doesn't need to be like a big, I'm going out of town, I'm flying to New York, I'm doing whatever, but I'm attending something. I may be speaking at an event. I might be speaking in a mastermind or a membership, like I kind of talked about earlier. Like other examples are other types of PR, right? Let's say I get featured in print, or I get, I go on the local radio station, whatever. These are all things that I would consider like visibility, type of items. But what I do is I literally keep a list of all these, I'm like once a quarter I go in and I'm like, okay, what were all the things you did this? I look back at my calendar and I'm like, okay, what were all the things that you did this quarter that hit that 1 time a week, again, for me, average, put them all in there. And then I'm like, what happened after that? And that's where I really track, like, what did clients come in through this? Did we see leads through, like, even if it's not individual to an event, I'll be like, over this quarter, how much money did we bring in? Can I trace that back to certain things that I've done? We just had a client, I just had someone join on just this week, and there's someone who it was a referral from someone I met at an event in March, right? So like, I'm even going all the way back then to like that quarter and being like, oh, okay. Like now we're even upping, right? Like what came from these visibility measures there. All I'm saying is like, a lot of people get stuck in like just showing up on the same channels that they own over and over and over again. And we need to make sure as business owners that we're getting out there more and more in front of new people, because it's really hard for our business to grow if new people aren't hearing about us. So I like to kind of put that number on it and be like, track it, see how it's going. Because I tracked all last year. I tracked all of 2024 and I'm continuing to track in 2025. But like, showing up on all these different channels, that's what makes the bulk of my money, even if it's 9 months down the road.
I really appreciate you sharing the example that meeting someone back in March resulted in a client today. Because a lot of people think that I went, I did it, where are the results? And it can just be a timing thing. I know it's 3 to 6 months. If I'm looking at a non-direct client and looking for referrals, I typically get referrals from somebody I met 6 months ago.
Love that. I love that you know that too. Like you're like, this is kind of the time
Same
frame.
thing.
Yeah.
I've tracked it, right? You start tracking it because then you start going, okay, where am I at? Do I need new clients? I need to start reaching out because I know I have a 6-month cycle. It allows you to plan so many other different things in your business. And that's why I love metrics. So kudos to you for having that.
Get that visibility KPI in there, girl. Get that visibility metric in there.
You got it. I mean, that once a week is
once a week on
good.
average is a great one. But I know I would say though, not for you, Christy, but for other people that are more at the beginning of their business, twice a week. I know y'all want to say less, and I'm here to say no more, because you actually have the time to kind of be doing that and getting out there more at that point. But I think for business owners, that have been in the game for a little bit, that once a week average is great. And again, fully understanding that like some months there may be like 2, You know what I mean? And then the next month there's like 8, right? So it totally kind of is just how it works out, but knowing that you're kind of always working towards that goal there.
Christina, finish this sentence.
Ooh, okay. Yes. All right.
The real win isn't getting on the podcast. It's
so many things. Okay, but I will go with, all right, the real win isn't getting on the podcast. And I would say this, the relationship that comes out of getting on the podcast. So I would say with the host and then with the host community, those are the real wins in my opinion.
Well, on that note, we're going to go take this relationship to the next level. Christina, it's been absolutely lovely having you on. And thank you for your insights and especially just validating a lot of things that Christy and I have been talking about. And yet we hadn't had a chance to discuss it with a guest. So there you have it.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Love talking with other badass women entrepreneurs about business. So truly, this was like an ideal afternoon for me. So I'm loving it.
Amazing. And to all the women listening to us, stay badass. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did recording it. If you like our show, please rate us, drop us a review on your favorite streaming app, and we'll catch you on the next episode. This was the Badass Women in Business podcast by Christina Lenkowski.